Hello everybody and welcome to OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. I'm Jack and today I'm here with another deck analysis for you guys from Burning Shadows for the Worlds format. This is indeed going to be on Darkrai, or Turbo Dark, featuring the new Darkrai GX as well. Really cool new ramp card for the deck that helps you sort of make this deck even faster than it already was. Just before I start, make sure you go and check out Flipside Gaming. With our promo code OmniPoke, you are going to get 10% off all orders over $10. So if you're looking to start off the Burning Shadows singles hype pretty soon after the set's released, obviously the set's out in not too long, about a couple of weeks as I'm recording this, that's going to be a really good place for you to start, and like I say, you're able to use that discount code as well to get 10% off any order over $10. So make sure you go and check those out. But without further ado, we will indeed start off the deck analysis with 4 Darkrai EX. Obviously, we all know what this card does. Dark Pulse for 2 Dark Energy. It is going to be for 2 Colourless Energy, but it's always going to be Dark because we're running only Dark in here. It is doing 20 plus 20 more for each Dark Energy you have on your board. So this is kind of the idea of the deck. We just want to ramp up this attack as quickly as possible. And start taking 2 shots into 1 shots with Dark Pulse turn after turn. 180 HP and resistance to Psychic are both pretty relevant for dealing with the likes of things like Garbodor, which obviously this deck is going to run tons of items, so being able to have that extra resistance is cool. It seems that Garb isn't going to be quite as popular in this new format, since Guardy is a pretty big sort of contender and does counter Garb quite well. But you know, having that extra resistance is still going to be cool. Next up we have 3 Darkrai GX. This card I'm going to go into a little bit more, simply because this is a new card from the set. 180 HP, again, resistance to Dark is real cool. Resistance to Psychic, sorry, is really cool. The ability Restoration is one of the biggest parts about this card. Once during a turn, if Darkrai is in your discard, you may put him onto the bench and then attach a Dark Energy from the discard to him. So it's a free energy attachment for the turn, which is obviously incredibly strong. Again, it's a Dark Energy, so we're going to be powering up Dark Pulse with it. We also have 2 attacks. Dark Cleave does 130 and ignores resistance, so that's actually really relevant for dealing with things like Xerneas, because you're actually able to one-shot Xerneas because of their resistance. Obviously Choice Band and stuff wouldn't work, so being able to go through their resistance is pretty cool. And then Dead End GX, we're pretty much never going to be using. But if your opponent ever does put themselves into a status condition, Dead End GX states that if your opponent's active Pokemon is affected by a status condition, it is immediately knocked out. So there will be very niche uses for this. Obviously, we're not really looking at this attack in this kind of build, but there are builds out there that do focus more on the GX attack. That being said, like I say, it will have some niche uses here and there, but more often than not, we're going to be going for Restoration mainly, just to try and ramp extra energy on in the early turns to start using Dark Pulse really early. We have 2 Tapu Lele, again, pretty standard card in a deck like Turbo Dark. We kind of all know what Turbo Dark looks like. Tapu Lele just being able to guarantee that turn 1 supporter, getting things like Fan Club and Hex on the exact turns we need them, to be able to carry on hexing through our opponent, things like Volk, Greninja, we want to be able to hex every turn. So being able to start that train off with Tapu Lele is really strong. Also, Energy Drive isn't a bad attack, because obviously we're going to be ramping a lot of energy on. We're going to be Elixiring, we're going to be Exp.Sharing. So Energy Drive can actually get into some pretty solid numbers against things like Volk. This can still be a very strong backup attacker. We have 1 Sudowoodo. Pretty much things like Rainbow Force and more prevalently Ray. Ray seems like actually it could be a pretty strong pick for Worlds. There's a lot of people talking about Ray, so just having this 1 card count that actually stops Ray from ever being able to one-shot your guys without hexing on their turn, and if they're hexing on their turn, they can't shame in for multiple cards, they can't hooper for multiple cards, you know. So Roadblock is a really strong ability, but just in general, getting this guy out and attaching an Exp.Share to him is pretty strong. Given that he stops one Pokemon on your opponent's bench, that's actually really significant for a lot of decks. A lot of combo decks want as many spaces, they want to be able to Lele, they want to be able to shame in as much as they can, so just being able to roadblock them out of the game is really cool, and just in general it's a really strong disruption card. And our other non-EX is, of course, Baby Yveltal. Oblivion Wing is our other means of attaching energy from the discard if we can't get into our Darkrai GXs very quickly, or we can't, or perhaps ability locked, anything like that. Plus, this is a really cool non-EX attacker that can skew the prize trade, so your opponent has to go through this, and then still 3 Darkrai. Again, we kind of know what Oblivion Wing does, just ramping extra energy in the early turns if we can't quite access the Dark Pulse from turn 1. Next up, we have the supporters, starting off with for Sycamore. Again, we want to be cycling through our deck in the early turns as quickly as possible, and we also don't mind discarding cards in this deck at all. We want to discard Dark Energies, and we want to discard Darkrai GXs to be able to start using Restoration. So very, very strong, even stronger in this deck than it is in most decks. 2N, again, because we want to be Sycamoring more, we want to be using N less. Some of the time, though, against our opponents that are Beaconing, or Algorithm GXing, or Hollow Hunting, that kind of thing, we want to be able to end those cards out of our opponent's hand. Things like Big Wheel as well. You know, we want to be able to hit N when we can, just to stop our opponent going too insane with these strong attacks like Big Wheel and Hollow Hunt. We've got 2 Guzma. Again, it's pretty much irrelevant in this deck, the switching part, because we have 3 Ultra of the Moon, giving pretty much all of our dudes free retreat, provided they have a Dark Energy on, and we're going to be spreading Dark Energy completely across the board, so it's essentially giving all of our dudes a Floatstone. So the actual switching on our side isn't that relevant. That you could say that Lysander would be better, but sometimes there will be niche situations where you don't have energy on Sudowoodo and things like that, and your opponent will Lysander it up to try and stall, so you're going to be able to use this retreat option out anyway. But yeah, just having this Lysander style effect is always going to be really, really strong. I think Guzma is a fantastic card out of this new set. I think Guzma is genuinely probably the strongest card, if not Guardi GX. So yeah, definitely worth having this Lysander effect in there. 1 Pokemon Fan Club, being able to Lele into Fan Club to search for Darkrai GXs to then discard them with an Ultra Ball or such to start Restorationing turn 1 is really, really strong. Plus late game, just filtering out your deck from bad outs is still going to be relatively useful. We don't want to play Bridget because we want to be able to discard the Darkrai GXs to then Restoration them back onto the board, so Fan Club is just infinitely better. Plus being able to use this kind of supporter on turn 1 is going to be really, really cool. Setting up multiple attackers, getting your Sudowoodo in the right matchups, getting your Yveltal in the right matchups, you know, it's just going to be really, really useful. And finally, Hex. As I mentioned, things like Guardi, things like Volk, things like Greninja all really rely on their abilities, so we want to be able to Hex them turn after turn and win that way. Guardi can be quite a difficult matchup because they have resistance, so we have to kind of Hex them to limit them completely rolling us. It doesn't make it even, I don't think. I think it's still a pretty rough matchup. We have a lot of ramp in this deck, so it's not awful. We can actually get to that 230 point eventually, but we need to be able to chain Hex for a couple of turns just so they don't constantly sort of overrun us with our which seems low now, 180 HP. So yeah, this is also why we're running 4 VS Seeker, to be able to constantly chain Hex, plus always be able to grab our supporters. Like I say, in the early turns, you're probably going to be Sycamoring away some supporters and stuff, so you want to be able to have access to them. Plus, it's a consistency card. This deck is all about super consistency. We've got 5 4-counts of items in this deck, I'm pretty sure it's 5. So, you know, this deck is all about guaranteeing consistency. You're drawing the exact card you need. Things like N aren't hurting you because you've just got consistent cards in your deck. For Ultra Ball, again, being able to discard Darkrai plus energy to be able to Restoration it back on the board to increase your ramp is still really, really strong. So we want to be able to do that as often as possible. Plus getting your Lele's, getting your Darkrai's initially, again, just really, really crucial to be able to start setting up with this deck. For Acro Bike, again, discarding cards to get your Darkrai's and your Darks in the discard, and also finding more cards, finding elixirs, finding supporters, finding choice bands, things like that, finding physical energy to be able to attach for the turn. All of these cards are just going to increase your turn 1 potential to be able to start Dark Pulsing as soon as possible for as much damage as possible. Same reason we run 4 Max Elixir. Whilst we do want to be discarding a lot of energy with Darkrai, we want to try and use our Max Elixirs in the early turns just to try and ramp it all on first, and then start discarding at the end of our turns to be able to Restoration the energy back on. And then for Choice Band, again, consistency. We want to hit these choice bands on every single one of our Darkrai's to increase that 30 damage. We want to be able to reach these numbers as soon as possible. Before, this kind of deck was more of a two-shot, one-shot deck, but with 4 choice band, plus restoration, plus max elixirs, we can actually look at going two-shot into one-shot immediately, which is really, really powerful. Supplementing that, we are indeed running 2 Exp.Share. This is to retain our energy once our attackers go down. If we can manage to attach both of these Exp.Share onto the board, it's going to mean that any Darkrai that goes down, we don't lose any energy at all, which is really, really crucial. It's also going to mean that we can continue to chain knockouts into the late game, meaning our opponent's ends aren't really doing anything against us, because all of our boards, everything we have is on our board. So we're not going to have to, try and find elixirs or physical energy attachments or choice bands later on in the game, because we're going to be retaining it all with the Exp.Share anyway. As mentioned, we are indeed running 3 Ultra of the Moon. Again, this gives all of our dudes pretty much 3 retreat, because everything has 2 retreat or less. And we're going to be spreading the energy about, so our opponent can't Lysander plus then kill us to take a load of energy off board and reduce a lot of damage from Darkrai. So we're going to be spreading our energy on the board anyway, so it's going to mean that Lysander / Guzma stall are not a thing at all for this deck. Finally, 1 Field Blower. Things like Fury Belt are slowly creeping back into the format. Things like Volk are playing it, Vikabulu are playing it. So just having this 1 Field Blower to have that one turn where you can knock off your opponent's Fury Belt and then go for that knockout, sort of increasing our aggression, is really, really strong. It's not amazingly useful a lot of the time. We're probably going to discard this. It's only going to be in matchups really that things like Fury Belt or Floatstone are relevant. Again, this can also knock off, like I say, Floatstones from Garbs to be able to Restoration if your opponent has an early Garb setup and you're not able to start Darkraiing or Restorationing. We are able to do that as well, so it's worth noting. But yeah, the card's not insanely useful. It's just really, it's a nice one-off to have against things that are now running Fury Belt. Finally, we are indeed running 13 Dark Energy. 14 was the regular count in the latest Turbo Dark build, simply because they need to be able to compete with Garb. But now we have Restoration. We worry less about using our items, even though we've got a huge chunk of items here. Garb is also seeing less play, so we can take these energy back and have less physical energy and just rely more on playing Max Elixirs, playing our choice bands down, that kind of thing. It's still a very, very high count, just so we can discard them early with Ultra Ball, so we can Restoration, so we can hit Max Elixirs a lot, so we can guarantee an energy attachment every turn. But yeah, the whole idea of the deck is consistency. The 2 cards I'm going to point out as alternate options. The first is Professor Kukui. It's another card that is a bit of a ramp card to push you into knockouts early game, but also with a Kukui plus a choice band, Darkrai GX's first attack, can actually reach 180. So for 3 energy you can reach 180 and you can knock out things like Lele. So that is a potential choice to be able to, if you're going down a more Darkrai GX route. But having the Kukui to be able to just do an extra 20 damage is still going to be useful anyway. But it is worth noting that you can reach 180 with Darkrai GX if you do play Kukui in the build. And finally, there is niche uses for things like Energy Switch, maybe a 1 or 2 count of Energy Switch, just to be able to again increase your turn 1 potential. It's not going to be, still have a very high turn 1 potential, simply because we're running 4 Max Elixir plus things like Acro Bike that are going to shuffle or get ripped through the deck anyway. But just having 1 or 2 E-Switch is going to mean, even if you don't manage to get too much, you can Restoration and then E-Switch off your Restoration to start pressurizing early on that way. We felt it was slightly better going for the more consistent sort of 4-4-4-4-4 route, to be able to just hit these cards as often as possible on turn 1 and really start setting up. But Exp.Share is a really, really cute card in here, and it's definitely one I'd potentially try out if you want to try and increase your turn 1 potential in a different way, rather than just the classic Max Elixir plus sort of Acro Bike combo. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Not too much has changed about Darkrai. We've just gone super turbo with it, not worrying about Garb at all, and just taking 6 prizes as quickly as possible. Let us know what you think of the list. Hopefully you're enjoying the Burning Shadows deck analysis videos. We've got plenty more to come before Worlds. And yeah, let us know what you changed. Let us know how you've been testing with the deck. And yeah, let us know what you'd like to see next. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. I have been Jack from OmniPoke, and I do look forward to seeing you guys in another video.